start? Okay, so I will call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting, June, what is the date today? June 12th, 2019, on the Strategic Plan, Nashua Board of Education, calling meeting to order at 6:35 PM. Ms. Oden?
Here.
Ms. Raymond should be joining us later on. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Mr. Moja?
Mr. Mosher?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Mosher is here by telephone. Are you by yourself, Mr. Mosher?
As I am.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Van Twyver will not be joining us. Mr. Guarino is here. Ms. Hohensee?
Here.
Ms. Timmons?
Here.
Ms. Porter?
Here.
Also with us is Dr. Mosley, Superintendent of Schools. This meeting is for work on our strategic plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mosley.
Okay, well, first of all, I wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is part of a planned meeting that we had, I say the collective we, the individuals responsible for the generation of the strategic plan. Part of this is, it's kind of, I would say, coming to an end in a sense that we started this in March, believe it or not, March of 2018. And as you start to embark on this journey, you learn more about yourself. You start to communicate with different individuals throughout the city and various stakeholders. I would be remiss if I didn't want to say thank you to all of those parents, teachers, administrators, board members who participated in the strategic plan process. I also would like to especially thank Ms. Porter for her time too. It's going to feel a little weird not seeing her almost every single day. I think at one point we saw each other every single day except for Sunday, but we're going to probably see each other this Sunday, so maybe that cancels us out or something. So, but it's been a journey, and I want to say, there are individuals that are the unsung heroes who are actually watching this. And I want to say thank you to Stacy Hines, and thank you to Don Miller, and Linda Walsh, and Lisa Yates, who are also part of this, and Diane Vino as well. Part of this work session, and I just want to be very, very clear that this is a work session. It's an opportunity for us to gain some feedback on your perspective, but also to give you an update on what we've been doing thus far. I've found that when we do these work sessions, I always feel like we start off with an idea that there'll be minor tweaks and modifications, but then we start to go down the track of making some modifications. Part of what I would ask the board to do is to just take a moment, not to look through everything and mark it up, but to just listen to what I have to say, and certainly as I can walk you through this process. And then after that process, I would be more than happy to encourage you to look through it and to certainly give that feedback. This is the third work session devoted to strategic plan. The development of the plan was all about giving our community a shared direction, a shared voice over the next 5 years to clarify who we are as a district, but to emphasize, most importantly, the importance and the commitment of public school education. This plan is really addressing who we are, why we're here, what we stand for and what we stand against. What we went through a process of, as I shared at the work session number 2, that we did, we saw over 7,000 statements from our focus groups. We also received approximately 3,500 plus statements from surveys. We also had surveys from cultural surveys that were administered 2 years ago. And so we had a wealth of data to look at. Through analysis of that data, looking through the responses, it was very clear to us that there was something going on in the district, something that I'd like to share with the board today. We learned that there is definitely a shift in how we do business, a shift to be more balanced in how we assess our students and our teaching, and a shift in terms of how we look at student achievement and how we, quote, do business in our schools. A shift in a culture that is long overdue to bring us stability and direction. Ultimately, I know that we share a commitment to be sure that we are instilling passion and learning in our students. We want them to be definitely lifelong learners. We have over 17 schools and hundreds of classrooms that are accounted for in the city of Nashua. We educate over 11,000 plus students here in the district. Public school education is fundamental and essentially what I would define as our ecosystem of the community. So part of what I'd like to say is that through the analysis of our information and what we saw 5 goals, 5 tenets that really resonated throughout the data. And out of those tenets were the goals. And so I'd like to present those 5 goals that came out of the data. The first goal has to do with what we define as student growth. To increase and monitor student academic growth utilizing building-based and district-wide instructional supports. The second goal that emerged had to do, let me go back to the first goal. That real first goal really talked about how we define student learning in our district. And part of this, there's this argument that persisted throughout our district for some time. Do we look at grade level? Do we look at individual scores? How is this being defined? And it's been very clear through the reactions through our kids, the reactions through our faculty, that they are interested in looking at the whole child, not just a test score. They're interested in looking at multiple data sources to define success. They're interested in looking at the whole child, not just through a test score or an iReady score, but multiple interactions, and I'll get to the social-emotional pieces for the next goal as well. So student advancement and growth would be defined by the whole child. The second goal had to do with environment, specifically around supports for student and faculty growth and social-emotional welfare, but I also wanted to include mindfulness. By far, our students need that extra support, that our students are struggling with many factors in this environment. I know we talked about the opioid addiction. We also talked about students who come to school anxious. We also talk about students who are in need of extra supports but can't get them or define them because of the things they're dealing with. We talked a little bit about in our last budget cycle about our ELL students. We also talked a little bit about special education population and better servicing them as well. The other piece to this that was very clear to us, when I talk about social-emotional pieces, we also talk about our faculty as well. And our faculty need our support as well. Our faculty want us to be cognizant, but also aware that they too need that level of support, not just in terms of human capital, but also in terms of professional development, time with their kids, understanding that the challenges they face every single day in the classroom has an effect on their teaching practice and on their social-emotional pieces, better for worse. And they want us, the collective us, the district, to acknowledge that and to provide that level of support and to make sure that they too are supported in and outside of the classroom. The other thing that popped up for the third goal, by far, was our professional development infrastructure. By far, this came across in all assessments and surveys that we administer. Our faculty and our administrators want better and improved PD. They want not just this half-hour or half-day PD, but real authentic PD connected to something, a direction in the district. The fourth goal had to do with safety protocol. Safety in terms of procedures, how we practice catastrophic events, not just practicing in one scenario, but practicing very building specific for our faculty, but also for our kids. This by far is a change in a way that we used to do business 20 years ago. Who would have thought that we are practicing these safety protocols, but yet our faculty are very cognizant of that reality, and they actually want to make sure that they have the proper support and guidance to practice with our kids, but also to know what to do in the event that this comes to their, if God forbid, if there's an event. The final thing had to do about culture. And when I shared the last meeting with you, there was an extensive conversation and reaction we had from our faculty around culture. Culture came up, and I would say two parts. It came down to building specific culture, and it also came down to our district culture. And part of that has to do with how are we with partnerships with other entities outside of the school. The other piece had to do with communication and partnership and collaboration and connectivity within the district. And I can share with you what we want to shift what's currently going on. And what's currently going on in this district is silos of teachers and groups and teams working well. But what this data has shared with us is that that's not what teachers want. They want better in faculty and administrator, better collaboration, better communication, better team, to move away from the me to the we. And that's the real shift that our faculty is looking for. Now, I have this, I know many of you were kind of looking at this diagram, but I wanted to just kind of show you the impact of this diagram, and then I'm going to jump to the mission, value, and vision. But in this diagram, you see that the first goal is really generated from the school to the student. So it's really building specific to increase and monitor student academic growth, utilizing building-based and district-wide instructional supports. The second goal is also focused around the safety piece and the nurturing and the environment. Cultivate a safe and nurturing learning and working environment for our kids and faculty. The other piece, now you look at this goal, goal 4 is a district-wide piece, and the district-wide piece has to do with the PD. And they want the PD to be not just connected to what they're doing in the classroom, but they want more, and we want more. They want the PD to be connected to the classroom and the kids. They want the PD to be connected to their colleagues. They want to participate in the PD with their colleagues. More importantly, our teachers and administrators and faculty want time, when I say to ruminate, and just to talk about the connectivity or the disconnect of the PD. Finally, goal number 5 is really about the culture. And the culture is a sense it affects both the Nashua Public Schools and the district. It's all encompassing, all the above. And so with that said, the goal and one of the poignant points of the goal 5 is to really make that paradigm shift from goal 5, a paradigm shift in a sense that we want to improve our culture, improve the way that we do business, improve the way that our students interact with us, improve the way that we are treating each other, talking to each other, respecting each other, teacher to teacher, student to student, student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, administrator to administrator, those types of variables. So at this point, I'd like to jump down to vision, mission, and value. When we embark on these endeavors, you always think that, okay, it's going to take maybe 15 to 20 minutes to design a mission, a vision, and a value. But what we found that it took a lot longer than we ever anticipated. In fact, it took us a series of, I would say, it took us finally about 2 hours through conversation and the dialogue when we finally kind of narrowed this down. 2 hours in one session to kind of narrow down what we really wanted to do. But I would say that we spent countless hours really honing and pulling out those key words to represent the vision, the mission, and the value. So just to understand tonight that I would be introducing the vision, the mission, the value, and our 5 goals. But I'd also like to leave with a discussion of the action steps, which I'll get to a little later. Keep in mind that each of our goals and our action steps speaks to our, or connected to our mission, vision, and value. So let me just read the vision out loud that was generated from our discussions, generated from the data, generated from our steering committees, from our leadership. Vision: be the model for excellence in public education for our students, staff, and community. And what was very clear from all of the data we looked at, from all of the comments, that our community wants to be the model. Excellence. Mission: the Nashua School District will educate to empower student success. That is by far something that our faculty, our students valued the most. It was our mission. It was something that they truly hold true and resonated throughout the data and the reactions we got. And finally, value. The Nashua Public Schools values a passion of learning based on integrity, trust, respect, empathy, and tenacity. By far, I believe that those 5 tenets really represent our value. And a value is, in a sense, your core. What is the core of you? Not just the educated, not just the student, not just parents, but it's everyone, all-encompassing. So part of this has to do with, so you got all this information. You have it all, right? And it can be overwhelming at times. And so part of what we did, and if I can just direct the board to this document here. This document here is that what we did is that we took all of the information that we got from our data source, and I'll read it out for the public so they understand what's happening here. We took our top 18 themes that were coming out of our data source for reactions we had from individuals who participated in our SWOT analysis. And so we had culture, human capital, leadership, student programming, funding, support, discipline, professional development, facilities, collaboration, social-emotional learning, curriculum, communication, special education, equity, reform, resources, and technology. And so we created this, and then we put all 5 goals across. And we said, if we wanted to make sure that all of these steps that we had here and our preliminary, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get you one down? Okay. And our preliminary draft of our goals for the strategic plan, we wanted to make sure that all of these action steps mirrored or actually were mirrored in our data source. So by going through this, what we did is that we validated our data in a sense that everything in reactions we got from our data was represented here in our goals and in our action step. And so this is by far a laborious way of doing it in a way that we are confident that these goals represent the data. We're confident that these action steps and goals represent what is the salient points in the data. Our goals mirror the feedback that we received from the multitude of sources that we received and engaged in critical analysis of the data sources. We have drafted action step items to address how we're going to react successfully to our goals. We are ambitious. I know this is an ambitious endeavor, but it's time for us to really start to set the stage and address the viability of this strategic plan, taking into consideration time management, human resources, financial resources. Over the last few days, that we have spent to refine this process. This process alone, taking all of the reactions that we put in our action steps and mirroring those reactions to our data source, took us 3 to 4 hours. But it was well worth it because we really were able to see what I would say some gaps and some positives in our data, but we also were able to make sure that our action steps and our goals mirrored our data. Tonight, I'm soliciting your feedback and reactions to our action items. I put draft on there because once you start drafting and digging into these action items, there's always some conversation, healthy conversations. When I think Sue and I have done this quite some time, I always feel like when I bring this document to individuals, I feel like it's a Picasso, but then when I get it back, it feels like it's one of my first grade drawings. But I can share with you that this document has been refined, and I'm not joking with you, close to about 15 times. It's been done that way because of the feedback that I've received from teachers, administrators, board members, and it's okay. I can confidently tell you that we've had some heated discussions over action steps. We've talked about some of the challenges developing these action steps. We've cried over some action steps. We've smiled over our action steps, and we've had some healthy discussion over that. In the end, this is about our kids, and this is about the direction we want to take our district. I believe that just getting this feedback tonight will be great. It always takes time to evaluate these steps and to make sure that they're connected. But these steps were done with fidelity. They're done with the student in mind, with feedback from our faculty. We're certainly looking forward to that feedback. Part of it is that we all have a responsibility in making sure that this is done in a way that is clear, concise, responsible, and in the best interest of our students. At this point, I'll take some feedback. I just want to be very, very clear that the vision, the mission, and the value are set, and they're set because we have spent maybe 3 or 4 months on that, and we've gone through this, what I call filters on that. And so after many, many discussions with our steering committees, with teachers, administrators, I feel very, very confident that the mission, the vision, the mission, and the value are representative of our community and what people are looking for. Thank you.
I just want to say that Ms. Raymond joined us, so I'm turning this meeting over to Ms. Raymond, our president.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. And thank you for getting started. I apologize for my tardiness, the traffic on the way back from karate. I've been looking this over, and I'm just blown away by the amount of work that has gone into it, especially where you have connected the action items to the themes that came out of all of the surveys and the focus groups. And I love this chart so that I can see where everything is. I do have one question about the values and grammar, because it doesn't have a period at the end, and it's missing the word "and."
You missed this part? I said it was a draft. Sure, no problem.
So I missed that part. So just
Yes, you're,
being a grammar crazy person.
yes, and for the record, if tourniquet is spelled wrong, that's on me. I think I spelled that wrong about 4 times.
All right. So I will let you know offline what other
Thank you.
spelling and grammar errors, if there are any. I imagine with all the I's, there won't be that many.
The first 3 are on me.
Does anybody have any initial feedback? Do we want to recess so that we can read these? I know this is the first time I'm seeing quite a bit of it, and then come back maybe in 15 or 20 minutes after people have had a chance to read and take notes and then generate some questions or some discussion. Mr. Kaufman?
I'll get it started.
Okay.
So thank you, Dr. Mosley. I know you guys did a lot of hard work. And like Ms. Raymond said, this is really the first time we've seen any of this in any detail. This was given to us tonight. So a couple of questions. let's see. On the themes, I'm disturbed, quite frankly, that I don't see any mention of college, and I don't see any mention of career preparation. We have a huge CTE program. We have 19 different programs. A lot of them really attempt to give students certifications so that when they graduate high school, they can actually go out into the real world and earn a living, or at least get started on their careers. So the deficiency that I see about no career readiness, I would make the case that every CTE program we have should have it should meet some kind of certification that's out in the industry. If it's a graphics art department, if it's the nursing, if it's the hair, I know the hair folks, I know I'm not using the right words.
Cosmetology?
Cosmetology and, that's just the makeup part, but also the hair, all that huge department that we have, I know those folks can get up to 16 different certifications, the nails, the color, the skin, all that stuff. So that, for me, needs to be embedded in every CTE program, and I would like to see it an integral part of this strategic plan. It should be very clear that if you come to high school and you might not be a college-bound person, you know that, and that's fine. That's a good thing. You know something most people don't find out until after they graduate college, that you can come here and take some courses and leave here with a certification. What our kids can do in the, it's the Cisco program, the switches that Cisco, their certifications, they get I think the level 1 and level 2 certification. That's probably 50 grand a year when they graduate. And we need to be clear that that's what we offer here. And I just see it completely missing in my first pass. Now, another question is there a supporting document, or is this the whole plan? Where is the analysis that led to these conclusions and the data that supported it? In my example, strategic plans are, it doesn't have to be long, but it has to be thorough, and it has to present an argument, and it needs to be supported by data.
So I'm
So,
going to call your
hold on a
attention.
second.
Well,
So-
let me just interrupt you right there, because you're asking, you did one topic and now you've switched to a second topic. So I want to make sure that that we get each topic so that it doesn't flow and people don't miss anything. But regarding your question about the data, that's what our work session was last month. Remember, there was a big PowerPoint that Dawn had created for us, and it had all of the data about what all of the survey results were. And I believe that that we were all emailed the actual surveys as well, all the questions. Yeah.
So what I think of as a strategic plan is there's a document, maybe it consists of a lot of charts as supplementary material typically, and somebody's going to pick up a single one only document, and that's the Nashua Strategic Plan. So they read through it, and they see everything they need in one place. So that's what my expectation is. So we may have received some information previously, and that was a truncated meeting. We were cut short that night. Remember, we had extra time. We had to give up time because of conflicts. So what I'm thinking I'm a member of the public. I'm looking out there. We're going to get a strategic plan. It should all be in one place.
Okay.
Your response to me says, oh, you have to go back to what we looked at last meeting, and I'm saying that was preliminary, that was early, that was terms gathering to create statements, which I thought was the weirdest thing in the world. But I expect it all in one document.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, I expected a narrative, I expect an analysis of the data, I expect conclusions, I expect a list of the members, in a published report. To me, this is a draft.
It is, yes, it's a
Rightly
draft.
so a draft, but I expected a document. This is not, to me, doesn't meet any criteria that I had in my mind that of strategic plans I've seen before and have participated in, granted in a business environment.
Okay.
But this falls completely short.
Okay, so your point 1 was regarding career and college readiness. Point 2 is you would like access to the data. And point 3, I'm sorry, and you had another one?
I'm less concerned about access to the data as that there's a narrative describing the data and how you used it to reach your conclusions.
Okay,
So it's easy to say, oh, it's based upon everything, and fine, there's a lot of information, but the analysis is, and the descriptions, you've got 20 words describing an action. I mean, granted, you've identified resources and stuff, but I want to fully understand what each of these actions entails. When you say define roles and responsibilities, and I just picked one out at random, define roles, responsibilities in the instructional team for each building team norm. So that should be described. It should say there will be, group of staff in each building will be, selected and maintained over a period of 6 months. They will look at these things, and they will report back at the school level and to the board.
Okay.
I want to know what those things mean, because
so you want all of the individual tasks for the action steps
I want them
now?
explained. Yeah.
Okay. Because that seems daunting for a 5-year plan, but,
Well, but the point is if you've got the data to back it up, and you're saying your data drove these words, which is what you said last meeting, then if you're saying you need to do this, you need to know why, and you have to have already given some thought as to how you're going to do it.
okay,
I'm disappointed in what I see, quite
okay.
frankly.
I just want to make sure that I'm getting all of the notes correct. Okay. Go right ahead.
I have just a couple of things. The purpose of today's meeting was to really, and I have a couple of things that I just wanted to dovetail on what President Raymond said. Purpose of this meeting today was to piggyback on the data that was shared in the last meeting. At the last meeting, we shared with you results from the focus groups. We shared with you the results from the survey. We also, this board has access to some results from the climate survey that was administered in 2018. And there's a summary of that, which you all have. So, not to sound rhetorical, I would be curious into what questions you had about that data you already received. Now, if you reviewed that data, they're not just 18, but that's actually the results of the SWOT analysis that was done in terms of the most poignant points that were identified in the data. So if you look at the first one, number 1 says culture. And by far, that is something in the data source that we described at the work session, the second work session. That data was the most poignant and number 1 thing that staff and faculty, parents and everyone really felt they wanted a transformation to happen in this district. Goal 5 is where that's connected. If you look at some of the action steps and you go through these action steps, you'll see themes of human capital, themes of leadership, student program and funding. And what the data that we shared with you last week captures those reactions. What you see through Goal 1, Goal 2, Goal 3, Goal 4, and Goal 5 are actually those action steps that are connected to the data. This document serves as a bridge between the data and the goals. I appreciate the college and career and readiness certification and that discussion. I think that's something I'll take back to the leadership team and go through those action steps. I think that's a nice observation. Thank you. Certainly, if you'd like me to resend that data that I have shared with the board already, that's fine. I'd be happy to resend those documents to you and to the whole board. The other piece in terms of the timing of this document, it wasn't to hide or to kind of sneak anything through the board or this work session. Believe it or not, we had a work session with what I call a subgroup of our steering committee, where actually the last edits of this were coming through early in the morning. And so partly is that we wanted to make sure you had the greatest and the best and the most up-to-date document before presenting it to the board to you today. Thank you.
Can I just ask just a follow-up?
One moment, yeah.
Thank you. So is this the whole document? Is there a narrative? I
So,
really want to know.
In your board packet that was sent to you, there is an introduction to that. There's a,
So there's a
There's-
1.5-page executive summary, is that?
correct?
Is
That's
that it?
An executive summary, and then followed by the goals that we had outlined here.
Right.
And so that's going to start to comprise our strategic plan. Mr. Kaufman, one of the things that I think is important for our strategic plan is that we want to make sure it doesn't read like War and Peace. We want to make sure that it's simplistic and people understand it. There are some other components to the strategic plan that I envision in terms of, I would say, like really synthesizing the goals so that, they're properly identified in a creative way. But we want this document to be simple. We don't want to make it 30 pages, because if it's 30 pages, no one's going to read it.
All right. All right, well, I'm completely disappointed without a narrative and an analysis. Thank you, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mosley. And I think, just to clarify for members of the public, this is a work session. This is not a presentation of a final thing. This is our third work session, I believe, on the strategic plan, and the strategic planning committee has been working tirelessly for 8 months now, 9 months. It's been a Herculean effort. So tonight, I think our goals are to review the draft information that we have, and really work on it and get some feedback so that for next week, we should have a more finalized thing that has everyone's input. So go ahead, Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. Of course, there's going to be a plan. Of course, there's going to be a narrative. Anyone who is familiar with the planning process, and I think I'm probably the only person here who has the word plan in their title as what they do for work, there is going to be a plan, and I actually think it's a very good idea to, on the part of Dr. Mosley, to synthesize it and not create a huge, big, thick document, because I have seen plans, I have seen strategic plans, I have seen master plans, I've worked on them, and they sit on a shelf and they gather dust. But of course, I fully expect a narrative, and I believe Dr. Mosley is going to give us a narrative. Also, I hope he gives us an appendix, and all that information that we have can be put in an appendix, a separate document. But I just want to say that this is excellent work, okay? And the reason why it's excellent work is because on one column you have goals. Goals are based on stakeholder input. That's planning 101, okay? Then you have actions to reach those goals, okay? Action steps. And then you have implementation. You have a timeline, you have the persons responsible, you have the resources, what are you going to give them so that they could implement these action steps towards the goals. And lastly, you have performance measures, measures of effectiveness, so that we know that we're on the right track. This is planning 101. This is excellent work, okay? Anyone who is familiar with the planning process should recognize this right away. And I just want to compliment Dr. Mosley because it's a lot of work. There's a lot of information to synthesize, to go through. So Ms. Porter and Dr. Mosley and his whole team, the teachers that he mentioned in the beginning, it's good work. And thank you very much.
Thank you for the suggestion. Thank you for reminding us about the appendix. I appreciate that, and we'll certainly incorporate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I agree. An appendix would be very helpful.
Yep, I agree.
But perhaps on the website, and obviously Ms. Hines is an expert on what to do on the website, but perhaps have it like 2 links so that it's not taking forever just to open the first,
Sometimes what they have, and again, I'll take the feedback if it's helpful. We try, when you're in the weeds in this, you're just in the weeds in it, so you're just trying to refine and get everything encompassing. So what I've seen is, and again, maybe I've just put it out to the board, you see like the synthesized strategic plan, and then it's the strategic plan with all of the appendix and every single document included. We want people to be able to digest this in a way that they're not overwhelmed. That's kind of our vision when we first embarked on it, but I think an appendix would be most appropriate. Thank you, I really do. Thank you.
And an executive summary. Each plan has an executive summary in the beginning too, which is, again, Planning 101.
Yeah, we have that, we did
Yep.
that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did anyone else have a comment at this time? Did anyone want to have a short break to digest before commenting? No? Okay. Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. Number one, it talks about academic growth. I didn't see on Monday a lot of academic growth from year to year on our assessments. I know that students do progress from one grade to another, but our academic growth, our scores are declining. And so year over year, I think we need to question whether Common Core is working, because our focus should be, in my mind, grades 3 to 5, making sure kids learn how to read and compute, do math, arithmetic, whatever you want to call it. That's the foundation that they're going to build on for middle school and high school. That's where the problems start. The first couple of years, everybody learns at a different level. I'm not really worried about that. I want them to enjoy learning. And then when they're cognitively ready, because reading is something that happens to each individual at a different time, somewhere between 3rd and 5th grade, give them the tools or give them the support that you have in your first goal. I think it should focus on getting that academic base foundation built. And if it means reevaluating our curriculum, so be it. But the focus should be reading and math in grades 3 to 5 to get them on grade level so they're not losing ground year after year. If they can't read their science books, they can't read their history books, they're at a disadvantage. So that's sort of like the fulcrum that we need to focus on. The other thing, you talk about cultivate a safe and learning and nurturing environment. I think in there you need transparency of the district with board members, community members, and parents willing to listen to constructive criticism. I think that's one of my biggest disappointments since I've been on the board, is that we can't improve if we can't listen to critics. If they come here to us and they tell us what they want or what they need, and that's valuable feedback. So if we discourage them from speaking out, then we're losing as a board and as a community. And I know that sometimes it's difficult for people to come and speak to us because there's negative feedback from the audience, and that's not respectful. So somehow this transparency factor with information to the community and from the community, to me, is an essential building block of a plan.
Thank you, Ms. Hohensee. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I did watch the curriculum committee video, and I did not see declining scores. So I don't think our scores are declining. What I did see was them looking at cohorts, the proficiency of cohorts from different grades, and some proficiency actually went up. It went down on some, and it went down 1 year and then up another year, or it went up 2 years. So I didn't really see any scores per se, so we can't really say our scores are going down, because I didn't see any scores presented, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I did see how the percentage of students that were proficient in each grade. And we had our new statistician show us the cohorts for I think it was elementary grades 3 through 5, and some of them actually went up. So there was more students that were proficient from one year to another in math and reading. So I don't think we can say confidently that our scores are going down, because I don't think they are.
Thank you.
If I,
Go ahead, Dr. Mosley.
I need to back this movie up a little bit, and I want to be just understanding where the conversations have been over the last year or 18 months. this district has focused on scores. And when I started talking about the shift, I'm telling you that this faculty in this district isn't going to be looking solely at scores and defining kids by scores. That's what I said. And that's what this strategic plan is all about. These teachers have been through too much. They have heard about scores, 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 and have not had the professional development and the human resources to carry out what they need to do in their buildings. These teachers have seen 3 different superintendents in 4 years come through this door, 6 different assistant superintendents throwing their initiatives out to them, that they don't even know where the assessments fit in. And they're saying, stop. But we keep pushing this narrative about scores, scores, scores. And yes, our teachers believe that the scores are important. Yes, they do. But they also believe that they need the time and the support and the human capital and the resources and the understanding of where they're at. Yes, reading and math is important, but so isn't the behaviors of the kids. Yes, reading and math is important, but also our kids need recess too. It's not a bad thing. Yes, reading and math are important, but our faculty needs a direction. We're asking our faculty, we give them like a car when we put them in the middle of the woods and we say drive off of it. And what our faculty and what our administrators are asking for is some infrastructure for our PD, infrastructure for our professional development, and infrastructure in terms of direction and values and getting on the same page so that, yes, they can focus on reading, writing, math, social, emotional, and all the above. But one of the things that is important, and it's in all of our goals embedded, that our faculty and our parents and our students want a better community. They want a better culture. They don't want a number. They want a name. And I hope that we can start to shift that conversation to really, I know what we want here, but we've got to move and have some type of compromise so that we can get our faculty on board to move our district forward. And that's what we see here. And I understand that there's been this conversation about reading on grade level. But if a kid doesn't read on grade level, it doesn't mean he's a bad kid. It doesn't mean we throw the bathwater with the baby. But I think it's important to understand the truths of some of our kids and faculty of what they're going on in our schools. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to really say, what do you think? How do we get better at this? But we won't do it if we keep telling that narrative that has plagued this district for so long.
Can I do a follow-up to that?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't mean to blame the teachers. I'm totally not, I'm not worried about them not contributing as best they can. That's not my objective, and I understand they need PD. No, nobody's questioning that. And I was the biggest advocate for recess. If I had to decide, I would throw out iReady. I don't need that many assessments. I don't think the assessments are the be and end all. We just have the state assessment. That's fine with me.
Okay?
But what I'm saying is if the assessment scores are going down, maybe it's not the student's fault. Maybe it's not the teacher's fault. Maybe it's this new curriculum that we're using. Maybe it's not working as well as something else would work. Because reading and math is the basic foundation of their education. That's all I'm saying. I'm not a big one on tester. I think each teacher knows the 20 or 30 students in their classroom, whether they can read or not without an assessment. I think they have it in their head. I know a good teacher would do that. So bringing in these outside assessments to help them assess, to me, if they like them, that's fine. If they don't, I'd be happy that they were gone. I want to give them the tools to make the students successful in reading and math. And I'm just questioning, maybe it is the new curriculum that we started, and have we evaluated it? Because it's supposed to be evidence-based decision-making. Well, where's the evidence that it's successful? Would there be something else that's more successful? I'm just questioning, digging down in that way. Not a blame game.
Doris, guess what? I'm going to say this out loud. I agree with you.
Good.
I agree with you. And Doris, I just want to tell you, I agree with you so much that let's read, I'll read it out loud, exactly what you said. First action step under our goal 1, create instructional leadership teams at each building in the district. Define roles and that right there answers your question. Those teams are going to engage in that exact question. We have to put that out there for them and the time to do so. So it's an excellent question, and we've asked those questions in our focus groups and in our action group. And I'm going to tell you this question. I don't know what the answer to the question is. I don't know it, but it's important that all of our buildings explore that question that you just asked, and that we may get different reactions from that question too, Doris, which is a good thing. But then we come together as a district and we say, out of all 17 schools, what are your reaction? And then when we get different ones, the question is, how do we get on the same page? And that's when we get into the curriculum reviews. And that's when we start saying, let's provide time for us to engage in those dialogue, in the dialogue and the question you just asked. So thank you.
And that dialogue is good, and that was why we asked Dr. McKinney to show us our school-by-school assessment results. Not, again, to blame anybody, but to find out what schools is it working better? What are they doing to supplement? How can we learn from one school to the next? If we have those teams in each school, can they be a little bit innovative in their school and not all do the same thing? So we can devise something that's more successful, and then everybody learn from that school and share it. Because the kids, as we all agree, are the focus. And getting them to read and do math before they go to middle school and high school would be wonderful.
Agreed. And I tend to agree with that. I would say that I think that kind of analysis, as far as what do the teachers see as the barriers, what is working well, those kinds of things, and from a school by school, I don't think is a board level investigation. I think that is a school by school investigation with some teacher leadership teams, and then when they have more information about what is going on, then they would bring that to the board if they needed a change. If after the schools look at that and say, you know what, this Eureka Math, we thought it was going to be great, but it isn't giving us the results we hoped for, then they should be coming to us and saying, we would like to pilot something new because this isn't doing what we want. I think that one of the things that has been an issue in our district is people doing it the other way and saying, well, I don't think this is working, so let's throw it out and we'll try this new thing and this new thing without giving our staff the opportunity to do those analyses and then get back to us. So my hope is that part of the strategic plan will be to give them that opportunity. And Dr. Mosley and I were actually speaking about this yesterday, and I feel confident that that's part of what's going to happen. The other thing I wanted to just kind of mention is I think it's reasonable for us to have an expectation of academic success and academic excellence in our district. I think one of the measurements for the success of Goal 1 is to increase our graduation rates to over 90%. We can't do that if kids aren't reading and writing. So I think that there is a focus on having an outcome that is the best we can do for our kids, and having our kids have that focus that they want to do the best that they can do. But in order to get there, I think it's important that we provide our staff with the tools that they need for their toolbox to be able to teach our kids, and also our students with the tools that they need to be ready to learn. And I think that I'm excited about some of the words that came out and some of the goals to look at that stuff to make sure that we have that high quality PD that is helping our staff get students to a place of learning readiness and then teach to them in the most developmentally effective way. So go ahead, Mr. Corino.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I didn't ask for school-by-school assessment because I think we have to be very careful. Only certain individuals asked for that at the committee level. The board didn't ask for that. I think we have to be very careful about what we tell the public, because if we do that, people could politicize it. They could stigmatize schools or politicize it. So I agree with what Ms. Raymond said, that it should be at the district level, those assessments, if they're done school by school. So I agree with what you what you said in the beginning, but I, for one, did not ask for it, and the board didn't ask for those from Dr. McKinney either. And so I think we have to be very careful about what happens. And Mr. Mosher made this point before at our last meeting, that there are consequences to the board's actions. I think that's a very wise comment on his part. When this board takes actions, we have to think ahead of the consequences of the actions of the boards. If we start to publicize a lot of this information, it could stigmatize schools, it could politicize things. So I think we have to be very careful.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Mosley.
If I can just add, I believe this is where, again, we spoke about the we and the me. Our faculty and our kids don't want to be divided. They want to come together. And when we say, I'm just making up a school, the South is better than, the North is better than the South because they scored 4 or 5 points better on an SAT. By the way, I just made that up. It automatically, that information just being out there has a very negative effect on the South. It just does. That's it. I don't want that. I don't think you want that. I don't think our kids want that. Because if the South has a negative perception, then we have a negative perception. And that's not what we want here. We are in this together. That's what the faculty want. That's what I want. I hope that's what, I believe that's what the most of the majority of the board. And it's not to cover up data or anything like that. But if we can get better, if we can be each other's sisters and brothers keepers in this data and this testing piece, we're going to work together better.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Go ahead, Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. I believe the information was promised to us in public 3 times. I know the information is public information. I can get it on the department website. I think as a board, we ought to look at data. It's data-driven decision-making, not to shame a school, but to say, that school needs help. What can we do to help that school? We shouldn't blind ourselves to the data. If the data exists and it could be beneficial to improving a school, then we should look at it. We should review it. I just don't see putting blinders on a board that's supposed to be overseeing the district and being helpful. And I don't think that we're going to get in and lead the teams in any individual school. We're an oversight board, but we still do need data. We still do need to see what's working and what's not. And maybe we can ask the right questions that can lead those leaders to finding the solutions that our students need. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mosher.
Yes, I very carefully listening to what's being said and analyzing. And I was looking at this document I have in front of me, this matrix thing, which does not tell me not a bloody thing. It's got a lot of colored boxes and numbers in it that have no correlation to anything that I can put together.
So, Mr.
I listened to Howard earlier, and Howard made some very good points. In looking at the data and the certifications and the programs that we have, and I think part of the strategic plan would be to take a look at the programs and then analyze them and then put the hypothetical students where he would start in square one and finish at the last square, which would correlate to his graduation. And in this way, you not only could you plan where he's going from square to square or class to class, but his proficiency when he is finished with it, and he has that final test, that assessment, which would give me information as to how well he's done. And I'd be able to look at his grade book and say, well, he did pretty good through this. He's got an A here, a B plus there, or a B there, and He didn't like the math because that dropped down to a C plus. But this would be a way to look at and look at our strategic plan and put it together into a cohesive manual, sort of, where we'd be able to look at the programs and using that information, be able to plot the progress of the students. Doris also made some very good points there, which I thank her for. Yes, the curriculum can be a problem. And when we see that something isn't working, why keep doing it? Isn't it Einstein who said, why do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? We are doing the same thing. And she made some very good points there, and I think we should listen to it. And I think we should take a look at the strategic plan again and see what we can do to give it a little tweak to make it something that is more understandable. This so-called matrix here doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me how well we're doing or in what direction we're going. I can look at that, and I don't know if we're going east, west, north, or south.
He doesn't have.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Mosier, we have 6 pages that you don't have. And so all of those numbers on your matrix, like under each goal, there's a number of numbers. Those are specific action steps that we have that includes a timeline, who's going to do it, how much is it going to cost, and what the measurement for success will be.
Well, that's very good. I was hoping that he had something like that.
Yeah, so I think once you're able to look at that, it might be a little bit more clear.
They need something to be able to compare it to.
Yep.
And then draw a conclusion that way. Because otherwise, I'm sitting over here and listening to these good ideas that come out, and I'm getting absolutely nowhere by looking at this matrix that I have in front of me.
Yep. So once you have the additional 6 pages, that matrix will be more helpful. But I think the 6 pages are the meat and potatoes of it anyways. So.
Well, that's good. I will be very glad to look at it and then revise my input.
Okay, thank you. And we would certainly welcome input once you get that chance.
I'm sure. Thank you very much for the time.
Go ahead, Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to know why members of this board are asking Dr. McKinney for information that they can get that's available from the state. Why are we making our administration do work that they don't have to if the information is already available? I think this board does do its oversight. To say that we work with blinders on is just not true, okay? There are good reasons not to, and I'm not going to go over them again. That Dr. Mosley said it best. We have to work as one. We have to be as one district and support each other and not divide the district based on school by school stigmatization or politicizing it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guarino. I'm going to try and get us back on track here. So instead of talking about the curriculum committee, if we could talk about items in the strategic plan, that would be helpful. Okay.
Can I just give a lens as we start to ponder this? Understand that when we go through the strategic plan, there's some compromise here, and I just want to say that there are some things in here in this plan that I had to take a step back and say, I can't see that, and I kept asking questions, particularly around the teachers, students, and really think about this not so much as the board, but really compromising and talking and putting yourself in the position of others throughout the entire district.
Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman.
Thanks. One thing, when I was looking at the mission, the vision, and all that, I was concerned that I didn't see anything about citizenship. And I think that should be clear, that we are preparing our students to engage in society as knowledgeable citizens and active citizens. And I'd like to see some comment, something along those lines. And I do have one other question that just occurred to me on the timeline of some of these things. And granted, this was just from a quick look a few minutes ago. But under the security one, safety and security goal 4, facilitate training involving tourniquets, I thought that was going to be a done deal. I thought that was something that we heard was requested a few months back. There was some PD that was supposed to be conducted. And I thought it had to do with literally the tourniquets. It was a first aid type thing. Isn't that this?
So
This is scheduled for spring of 2020. Why are we waiting?
So just let me clarify. There is the initial ADD training, and then there's another training that it's a visual or demonstration of the tourniquets. If you recall, in our budget, we actually put in $20,000 to make sure that there are tourniquets in all of our schools. That hasn't happened yet. Once those tourniquets are actually purchased and stationed in our schools, we're going to do another training with the tourniquets in our schools. So really what our faculty wanted was more extensive training, but not so much training in generality. They actually wanted training in terms of building specific. So for instance, where do they evacuate in the event that you're at Fairgrounds Middle School? That evacuation or that level of safety reaction is very different than the South. And so that's the kind of they want to ratchet it up or take that training to another level. But it's both like the catastrophic piece, but also involving tourniquets. And we haven't done that yet. Just please keep in mind that when we talk about safety training, and I think this gets lost in translation as well, we don't have total autonomy over that. We're working in collaboration with law enforcement, so they also have a structure in place as well, and certain individuals who can provide that training. So it allows us some time and some planning in terms of making sure that that's done in all 17 buildings.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes,
Can I
please go ahead.
Thank you. So on that same page, the last item, 4.5, provide ADD, avoid, deny, defend training to all new staff. And we did 2 phases already. And then your next scheduled event, you're suggesting be fall of 2021. I don't know why you wouldn't do that every year.
So we do it every year. I say we
But
try.
This
We
is
try, but we
2
also
years out.
We also have new employees that come in as well. And so ideally, we'd like to do it in the fall and the spring. Please keep in mind that by allowing this time, it allows better coordination and timing to organize and coordinate with the police. Understand that if we can move that up, we certainly will. But this is something that's new. And when you're talking about 17 different schools and doing that training, it takes time.
Thank
All
you.
right.
I have a couple of questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Oden, please go ahead.
No, first, I want to thank Dr. Mosley, Ms. Porter, Ms. Miller, I believe her name is, Dawn, who, I think the way this is presented, it takes time to go through it, but it is done very well. It's very easy to follow. And I want to thank you. I was reading an article this week where another school district in southern New Hampshire was doing a strategic plan, and they had put $40,000 away for consultants for the strategic plan. So kudos to us for saving the money, and thank you for all the work you've done. The thing, it's going to take me time to go through this, but I'm just looking at the first page, and when you get down to 1.12, assessment, redesign, reevaluate the test and testing schedules district-wide so that testing and schedules are purposeful and connected, streamlined. That's probably one of the concerns I hear from a lot of teachers.
Yes.
They're using too much instructional time for testing, for preparing for the test and taking tests. So it's good to see that we're going to have people evaluate that. and to evaluate how valid the test is to the curriculum. There was a time when Nashua had everyday math, and the test that we took in the classroom was related to everyday math. We had the same type of examples that we had daily that we were teaching the students. And what I'm hearing oftentimes, iReady, it's not the same as what the children have been taught. So I don't know how valid the scores are. I've had many teachers say it's helpful. I've had many say it's useless. So I'm glad to see that's being evaluated by our staff. It's going to take me more time to go through this, but just looking at that one thing gives me hope that there's lots of good things in here. And I thank you and all the people that were involved in this for all the work, because I think it looks like something that we're going to be able to use. And I hope it doesn't get too detailed and too long, because too often something like that gets put on a shelf. Because we've had one before.
Yes.
And we don't want that to happen.
That's the challenge. Thank you, Ms. Oden. I think we could have listed 25 more action steps, and so we really tried to, when I say, hone it down to the point where people wouldn't feel overwhelmed. But we recognize that it doesn't always capture every little step. We recognize, and teachers said, listen, we give iReady test, 3 times a year. Then we do the state testing. And to be honest with you, if you're an ELL student, then you got to do the WIDA test. And the teachers have said, where does all this fit in? And so part of that, the feedback we got from the faculty and from parents is, number one, can we streamline the tests so they're purposeful? And number two, the feedback we got was some of the kids need some incentivizing the test too, because our kids don't realize some of them are like, we just want to get through the test so we can get back to what we're doing. So those conversations are having. I also would like to throw out, if this is a lot to digest, I totally get it. I would ask that please don't get too caught up in spelling, and our timeline is a little flexible. What we tried to, please understand when you're looking at the timeline, any new budget cost, it can't be done in this budget cycle because it's set. So you're really looking at FY21 for any type of new initiative or anything like that. And please keep in mind that we have to be flexible in that, because we don't necessarily know how much the city's going to give us. And of course, the elephant in the room is special education costs out of district. So all those variables factor into the things that we're proposing as well. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mosley. As people have been talking, I've been maybe making little notes to myself about people's questions and things that they wanted to see that they didn't feel like were in here. And one of the things that Mr. Kaufman had said was regarding CTE and college readiness. I noticed on 1.11, it's revise and update the curriculum review management plan. Would that include CTE?
I could say yes. Yes.
Okay. And then kind of bumping on that, Mr. Mosier had specifically said that he wanted to see a curriculum review. So I'm seeing that under 1.11. I'm also seeing that under 3.6, which is to hire a director of curriculum and instruction to maintain tracking and development of curriculum efforts. So that looks like it's in a couple years out. But I'm encouraged to see that some of the things people are suggesting are in here. Regarding, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
I say regarding citizenship, I think that is incorporated a little bit in goal 2. There's a 2.5 is to examine and recommend norms for student behavior, handbooks, policies, et cetera. To me, citizenship falls into that. And then as far as transparency, I had written down transparency. To me, that looks like it falls under goal 5.
Yeah, there's one about publication.
Yeah, publication, and there's things about parent forums and school-based communication system to get information out to the public. So I'm hoping that as we move through these action steps, that we continue to bring up some of these discussions about, are we still doing this with fidelity to the idea of transparency. One second, Mr. Kaufman. And then I did have a question. In my packet here, I have a goal 6. So
Yes,
can you
I would
speak
like
that?
to, in your packet, you have goal 6, and really if you look at goal 6, but you also look at you look at goal 6. Goal 6 was, I could not.
With budget, right? Goal
Yes.
6 is budget.
Right, it's all directed to budget. And ultimately, really, if you look at this, there's a nice diagram that we actually, I don't have it in front of me, but if you listed all of the goals, actually underneath there is the budget. And the budget really plays a significant factor on how these goals will be played out. If we don't get the budgetary support, we don't allocation, many of the initiatives or action steps will not be played out. But I just, as an exercise, I felt incumbent on myself and to the board and to the people, just to create that 6th goal that, in a sense, that our budget is significant enough that it does have an impact on students, and it does have an impact on our human capital. It does have an impact on our facilities. So I just noted it that it would be something that we should always keep in our rear view mirror. But it was an exercise I did just exclusively on the budget.
Okay, thank you. And I did appreciate how there are line items here for the funding sources that you anticipate, and then the anticipated costs for some of your action items. So that will be interesting as we move forward.
Yes. And there's some unforeseen funding sources that happen too that can be helpful. Sometimes we get a little bit of grants from the state. This year, we got a little bit of one-time support from the state on special ed.
Yep.
So that was very helpful. Those little things can have a big impact on something like this.
Right, and there's a number of security grants too
Yes,
that
yep.
keep popping up. Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. 2 things that come to mind. Since you just mentioned special ed, I'll start with that. I don't see anything, again, these are bulleted, just a list of actions. One of the things that I'm concerned about strategically for this district, you just alluded, you mentioned it earlier, just again now, special ed, every year we're hit with anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 in additional costs. That's a budget driver. Our budget is driven by that expense. That determines if Mr. Donovan is going to be over or under, is where that item comes in.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything in here addressing the strategic importance of special ed as an expense driver and ways to mitigate that, which we've talked about before, which is, and Mr. Hollowell was an advocate. I'm kind of channeling Hollowell right now. I hope he doesn't mind. But the point is we need to look at the district as a destination for special ed delivery of special ed services, not only for our own students, but as a destination regionally for people to send their kids to us. That would help, that would allow us to provide greater levels of service and at the same time help to reduce the potential costs associated with those things. I don't see anything in here about that. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that has to be something this strategic plan looks at.
I know, thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I know you mentioned that the last time.
you,
I'm sorry.
I also have one more thing.
Yeah.
Are you going to say anything else?
No, go ahead, Dr. Mosley.
No, Dr. Mosley was
No,
speaking.
you finish, please.
Okay, so the other thing is the IT, our information technology. So I noticed in the big chart, the district goals, technology is listed at the bottom, and there are several references to technology. And it's about testing or whatever. I'm just looking at it from an infrastructure point of view. There's no discussion in here that I've seen, again, we didn't have much time to dig into it, about IT as an infrastructure. I'm looking at the budget drivers, $1 million a year in IT. That is one of those things, I know Mr. Fahrenkopf, he's very tight with his money, he spends it wisely, but that needs to be looked at over time. This year we got hit with those switches, large costs, over $200,000 on some crazy internet switches we need. But what I'm talking about here is the idea of, so the strategy, we've never had this conversation in the 3.5 years I've been on the board, is right now we purchase our equipment, we kind of run it into the ground on a 6-year depreciation schedule rather than a 3-year business cycle. And I appreciate all the work that's necessary to do that. But the reality is we also buy our servers and we host them and maintain them ourselves. So there's no discussion in this strategic plan. The trend now is to go on the cloud, whatever that is, to a service provider. I know since I'm still subbing in Merrimack, the high school up there uses, I think it's called Power School, and their laptops are on a 3-year lease type, and their equipment's always new. And they don't have to steal a part out of one machine to go support another. So I believe some discussion needs to be about information technology in terms of infrastructure, in terms of equipment, just in terms of, I would believe, because Mr. Fahrenkopf has a very good sense of what the inventory is, he knows what that replacement rate has to be to maintain it. So at what point does this district maybe look at a new IT solution or start getting out of what we're doing and shifting into something else? I believe within a 5-year window, the district has to do that. And along with those things, and maybe you hint at it in one of these areas, and I forget where it is, where you talked about the board being more, I don't know the word collaborative was there, but just that the board was better communication and working better together. There's an item in there. I think technology needs to be part of that solution for this board. I know it was suggested by the previous data analyst that the board itself could have shared drives and things like that, that all the information would be in a shared drive. We wouldn't have to go hunting and pecking. The distribution would be a lot easier if we had either a laptop. I'm not sure a Chromebook would work because what we do requires typing. I would need a real keyboard. But something needs to be looked at from an IT perspective to make the board more efficient. And I don't see anything in here on that. I did mention that there was an allusion to something, but I think something like that needs to be called out in here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I agree with your analysis there that technology is very important, as are our special ed costs. I don't know what the solution is, but hopefully
We have to address them in the plan. We have to be aware of them because they're such expensive items.
Yep. So, go ahead, Mr. Corino.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to mention that with the joint committee with the aldermen, construction, and the potential middle school, we have discussed creating spaces and facilities for special ed so that we are a destination. So this idea is definitely on the minds of our aldermen and as well as our COO and plant managers. They understand that. So whether we get a new middle school or rehab the old one, we're going to rehab all of our middle schools. We're going to have that opportunity to do that, to create spaces for special ed so that we don't send as many out of district. So there's a lot of people who are aware of it. But I do agree that maybe we should have a section in the strategic plan that mentions the potential new middle school and the potential rehab of our other middle schools. I think it doesn't have to be a long, involved narrative, but I think it's probably a good idea to mention that in the strategic plan. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion on both of you and Mr. Kaufman. I would look at this as, instruction for our students with special needs. I know that Ms. Fitzpatrick has been on the committees along with other board members, and I know that they're, for all our middle schools, in this case, creating more usable, instructional, and appropriate spaces for our special education students and faculty. I'd even go so far to say that we also have about 3 middle schools, Maine Dunstable, Birch Hill, and Mount Pleasant, who are also in the queue for our construction projects. But all those projects, in the middle school will be the first one, will consider space for our kids to start to attract and retain them from in-district. I think that part of doing the strategic plan, again, I think that everything you said, Mr. Kaufman, about technology, about out-of-district, I agree with. Everything that said, even adding a little bit more of this, I completely agree with. Here is the challenge. We want everyone to be able to digest this in a way that it's focused. The hardest part of this strategic plan really is saying no and prioritizing. There's no doubt in my mind that technology infrastructure is important in all our schools. We do have an active technology committee working in our district that's going to tease out and address that. They haven't come up with recommendations, but they're working on that. But one of the things that came out of the data is the culture, the human capital, social emotional pieces for faculty and our students, the way we do business, and safety. And we could, and not to say that all of the reactions are not important, but the challenge is we really want to hone in on those key points for our faculty and our community to just focus on over the next 5 years. In a district this size, even 5 goals, it's large. It's really large.
Will the strategic planning committee be meeting again between now and our next board meeting?
The steering committees are not not scheduled to meet. I'm going to reach out to the members. They don't know this. So yes.
Maybe.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Thank
Yes, but I also want to say that I know some of the members are still digesting this. I will make myself available if you want to come and talk to me personally, just to kind of get that additional feedback and incorporate that as well. Be happy to do so too, if that works for some of the members.
Okay, thank you. I took notes, and I saw you taking notes too, so I'll make sure that I email you what I wrote down. Mr. Kaufman.
Thanks. So I understand the goals and everything is a byproduct of the focus groups and the people that participated in those meetings and whatever committee, but largely from the focus groups as well as the steering block, all the people that got involved. That's fine, but here's my big concern. 99% of those people who participate in the focus groups or on the committees or whatever have no knowledge of the district, or have limited knowledge of the district budget and where the costs are, what the cost drivers are, and what gets us in trouble, and what's a constant source of, like technology, you gotta update it, because it's useless if you don't. And the special ed piece we talked about. So by relying so heavily on people who don't know what the board knows and what the operations people know about the buildings, about the infrastructure, about the budget, the focus is to leave out IT as part of the strategic plan, for me, is a foolhardy idea. Not to address the special ed as an area. I'm happy to hear that they're moving forward on that. I don't go to those meetings. But to hear that it's happening should be reflected in the strategic plan. To say we've got to say no to IT or no to trying to, address the needs for special ed in some way, shape, or form, I think is the wrong thing to do. You have to mention it to show that you considered it, even if you included it at a lower priority, which we could always talk about. But not to include it, someone might come along and say, I can't believe they don't have anything here on IT. Don't they know they spend $1 million a year and they could do better by doing this, this, and this? That evaluation needs to be here. So I can appreciate your decision to say no to certain areas, but I don't think you can ignore budget items that have $1 million a year in expenses. And if you do that, then I think you'll lose credibility for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Does anyone else have a comment or something that they would like Dr. Mosley and, Ms. Porter to take back with them? Ms. Hohensee?
Getting back to the idea of special ed as a destination, I think that's budgetary and strategic plan. That's key in terms of containing our costs so that we can use the extra money for other things. It's almost to the point where it's better to have a special ed as a destination facility or rooms or wherever in a middle school, but then where about the elementary, what about the high school level? I don't think we're going to pack them all in one building. Maybe, you know, when are we going to hear from the building committee? So that we know, maybe we don't have the resources to update all 3 middle schools. Maybe we have to focus on getting our costs under control before we do something that expansive. And, you know, that would be nice to know before we come out with a strategic plan, because that's key to where our big bonding is going to be. It's hard to finalize these goals without some more information from those. And, you know, how long has it been? It's been a while since the board as a whole has been updated.
About the middle school project?
Yeah, and,
Okay.
well, whether it's viable to rehab, whether we have a new construct, and if that new construct, is it more important to do all 3 middle schools, or is it more important to find special ed facilities so that we're not transporting our students out and we can pull and attract in? I mean, there's...
Yep. So not to, I was saying earlier, I don't want to talk extensively about other committees, but the answer to that question is that we don't know yet.
Right.
We're still in phase 1, which is the information gathering phase. The architects are working on a report. The geo survey is happening right now. And sometime in the early fall, we should get a report at the JSBC from both the architects and the geo surveyors with what they found in the schools. And then by the end of the year, so by like October, November, we should know some preliminary number estimates for renovating versus building new. And then some preliminary ideas about what renovations have to happen and what we could do. But again, it'll be very rough numbers, but that won't happen until the fall. And then that would have to come back here before any decisions were made.
That may drive our strategic plan, even if we pass this, when we've got those huge goals going in direction right or direction left.
And again, those, not to get too far afield, but most of the middle school project is coming from city bonding. It's not coming out of the school district budget.
But, okay, that's good. I mean, that's fine. It's usually where it happens. But if we can bond and get that bonding done to alleviate our budget overflows, then we have money to use. It's all integral.
Yes, agreed. Mr. Corino?
Thank you, Madam President. I didn't hear Dr. Mosley say that he was not going to include budget in this plan. I didn't say that he was not going to include IT in this plan. And so I think those things, I'm not saying there's going to be a huge section on there, but I don't think those things are going to be excluded. You know, any input from our COO, I'm sure, is going to be there too.
Mr. Mulger, are you pressing buttons?
Excuse me?
We keep hearing like beeps on the line. Are you pressing buttons? Were you trying to interject? Okay.
So I think those things are going to be in this. I hope they are going to be in this plan. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Corino. Mr. Mosher, did you have any other commentary?
Well, I mentioned about bonding just a little while ago.
Yep.
And right now, the interest rates are very favorable, so that might be a deciding factor in bonding for some of the expenses for renovation or construction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Ms. Porter, did you have anything to add this evening? I know that you've been working very hard on this, but if you had any comments or thoughts that we haven't gotten to, I am trying to pay attention to the time as well, because as we all know, the Bruins are playing. Hopefully they haven't actually started and it's still commercials.
I appreciate all of the input. I've been writing down furiously everything that everybody says. I will say that one thing that we have tried really hard is to be responsive to input. I think that we have listened to everything that everybody has said, and I'm listening very carefully to everything that's being said tonight. This is still, we have to go through an editing and revising. It's not in its final form now, but I think that if people, when they leave here, could, just kind of look carefully at the action steps, at the meat of what we've tried to do here. As I look at some of these, when they're finally written down here, they're, a sentence or two, but I can say that for some of these to come up with them, we're a good hour or two on each action plan. So we've tried to be really thoughtful and deliberate, and if we've, how sometimes when you're just so involved in something, you can miss things, and that's why we're really careful to be taking input and listening to everything. I know that we have talked about supporting documents and, appendices. We're not quite at the point where those are ready to bring. I think that this has been a learning process for all of us who have been involved in this. This is my first time doing such a strategic plan. And I think that, sometimes you just have to jump in with both feet and you figure it out as you go. And so we've learned things about when we've done this. We were so careful about getting input. It took a little longer than we thought. And so now, at the tail end of this, we're really putting in a lot of hours to do the actual analysis of the data and to come up with this. And, hindsight is 20/20, and it would have been good to have maybe, a little bit of extra time. But, as Dr. Mosley says, we've been, there have been a core group of people who have been putting in a lot of time. So we will definitely go back, take all of these suggestions, and if people have something to put in later on, we would really appreciate that. And I do want to commend Dr. Mosley for being so open and responsive to input. Are you? There you are. So he's, hi, he's, not taking things personally, always keeping in mind what's best for the district, for kids, for our employees. And sometimes that's hard because we all have points of view and we come in and we have strong feelings about certain things. But I really feel that all the steering committee and the groups of people, everything we've worked with, I think that those have been safe spaces for people to really go out on a limb and express their thoughts and concerns. And I think that, that's a big thing to have a safe space because, for some of the people who have come and met, it's hard to speak to the superintendent so bluntly and so honestly and to, just lay it all out on the line. And I think that it's good that people know they can do that and that you've been receptive and respectful of those different opinions and points of view. So, and I'm pleased with the way it's going tonight too. We're really happy for all of the input. And once this is done and approved, it's still a living document. As we go through, if changes need to be made, I think that that's certainly appropriate. But, if people, when they're reading this over, can just get with the, just kind of get the big picture of where we're trying to go. I think that, having worked in Nashua for 28 years, that I personally appreciate the effort and trying, we're a big ship, and to steer that ship, we want to have a direction and have common language and common goals for everyone. It's an important exercise to go through. And, speaking, once this, is confirmed, I hope that all of the stakeholders will see themselves in this plan. And because, we've got to work together. We've got to come together for a common purpose. And there's some hard conversations that have gone in with this, so because it's a big, important thing. Thank you, and please don't hesitate to give us some more input. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, great. I would entertain a motion to adjourn when people are ready.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second. Okay. On the motion to adjourn, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes?
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned at 8:15 PM.
All right, thank you, everybody, and best of